thank you for coming on the program tonight. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Adolph Bernanke, obviously not your real name.
Well, thank you, Charlie McGrath. You know, I've been a long-time listener. I've been listening to your show for about 2 years now. You know, when it was a 1-hour show, and now to where it's a 2-hour show, I've been listening almost every day. And I want to tell you that I'm only 30 years old. I joined the military after September 11th in the delayed entry program. I did a year and a half delayed entry, and I signed up right after September 11th. I watched what was going on our mainstream media, you know, as a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, you know, I joined up. You know, I thought we're under attack. I'm going to do my part for God and country, and I signed up, and I did it. I signed up as 19 Kilo Fort Knox, Missouri, or Fort Knox,
Kentucky. Yeah.
And let me tell you, from day zero, you know, you realize that you're not fighting with just Americans. You're fighting with anybody that's willing to be an American. And this is what's beautiful about this country, is that there's so many people outside this country that want to be Americans, and they're striving to be Americans. And they're signing up in the military. So day zero, when I joined up in the military, I realized that I got South Africans, I got Mexicans, I got Caraccans from... I got people all over the country, all over the world,
right,
serve the United States military to serve for America on this September 11th lie, or if it's not a lie. So I can only tell you this, is that don't let your kids do what we have done in the last 10 years, because September 11th was 11 years ago. And 11 years ago, we were in a different place than we are now. We weren't listening to Charlie McGrath. We weren't listening to Rense Network. Well, at least a lot of us weren't. And a lot of us might have been still in high school. And I was one of those kids in high school.
Which is, you know, that, and let me interrupt you for a sec here, because that's amazing to me. When I think back to 9/11 and realize, you know, you're 30 years old, you're young still, you know, but you were just, you know, a high school student when this all went down. And to have an entire generation that has been subjected to this this propaganda of patriotism and the reasons for why, you know, your sacrifice and other sacrifice, and the reasons why people are dying around the world. When we understand that these are propaganda tools, man, it's a painful thing to go through. But what blows my mind is this whole entire generation, this whole, you know, you were high school at the time. Here you are, 30 years old. That whole span of time is a group of youth in this country, men and women, who, you know, that were boys and girls when this began, who have grown up with war. And I've talked about it on the program before. You probably heard me talk about this. My boy, my 12-year-old boy, who was born in the year 2000, more than likely, the path we are on now, I have almost no doubt, he will be offered the opportunity and will be under patriotic guise to go into the same areas that I was in 91, that Adolph Bernanke was in recently, that he will have a chance to go to this same region of the world and the same worn out, tired excuse of a reason, which is we're spreading democracy, we're spreading, you know, we're spreading freedom around the world, and we want to break through that, and that's why, you know, that's why I want to get Adolph on tonight. That's why I'm ecstatic to be on the Rense Network, and I love the fact that alternative media is making a dent. All right, we're going to be back with Adolph Bernanke, more Wide Awake News Radio, 3.5 minutes. Hang tight. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host. We have Adolph Bernanke, a pseudonym for a member of the chat room in there all the time, but he has a story and he wants to share it, and I want him to get this story out. Now, he told you a brief little bit summary on how he ended up going into the military, right? We saw the towers come down. Then we saw Building 7 come down. Nobody questioned it then. It was just the terror-loving terrorists who were over here flying airplanes into our buildings, and there was a lot of patriotic fervor at that time. Y'all remember back, don't you? Y'all remember back to every car going down the street had a Chinese-made American flag with a plastic flagpole rolled up into their window. and we still see the shirts now, right, with the eagle, with the tear in its eye, never forget, the whole 9 yards. I mean, the patriotic fervor. And even Glenn Beck, when he was grabbing hold and making the Tea Party movement his own, he was naming his rallies, the September 12th, because everybody was united, everybody was on board. And it's all true. All that occurred. I was there. I remember it. I felt the same sense of patriotism that Adolf did. I'm former military. I served in that region of the world. I had friends that were killed in that region of the world. So of course I was on board until I woke up and realized, wait a minute. Adolf Bernanke's going into the same region of the world that I was in a decade earlier. My kid's going to go into the same region that I was in. At that point, it's going to be 3 decades earlier. The reasons that they keep giving are, we need to spread democracy, we need to have purple finger revolutions, we need to enhance their economic condition, we need to have a global central bank step in there and tell them where their resources are going to go and the best place for them, or the best way for them to live. We're dictating from the United States and from the West how this region of the world is going to develop. But when the truth is told, when we look at who's really profiteering from this never-ending war, we find out that it isn't about this patriotic notion. It isn't about spreading freedom, liberty, and so-called democracy around the world. It's about protecting the profits of the corporations that are deeply involved in war, and protecting the profits from those who benefit from the carnage of war. Now, Adolf Bernanke was there. He's a 19 kilo. He announced that before the break. For those of you who don't know what that is, the giant 49-ton M1A1 Abrams tank, 120-millimeter smoothbore cannon, this devastating piece of equipment, he was a crew member on it, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience in Iraq. So, Adolf, let me ask you, did you go there in 2003 with the initial invasion?
I sure did not, but I did not. But I did show up for the relief for those original guys, and I ended up at a Fedayeen bombed-out shelter named Scunion, and it was across the street from Fob Warhorse. Fob Warhorse was a great big COB, central operating base. You had the females there, you had the food there, you had the supplies there.
Right.
Across the street, across the MSR Warhorse, as it was named at the time, we had Fob Scunion, and we had the infantry and the tankers across the street at our base. And we provided the security for Warhorse at the time.
All right. So, and those of you who don't understand, you have this depot. This depot where all the men and women are. This is the rear area. If this was a war with a front, this is where vehicles go to get maintained. This is where the food is landed. This is where everything's shipped out of. And this is why there's a mix of combatants and non-combatants. In this case, I guess it would be some of the rear echelon folks that don't go out and actually engage in combat in a typical land war. That was your central operating base. The FOBs, the forward operating bases, is where the combat troops are. These are the infantrymen, the ground pounders, and the tankers. And he's talking about providing security for this central replenishment hub. Did I get that right?
Absolutely right. Thank you for clearing that up. You couldn't have done it better than I could have. And yes, we did that for 150 missions, at least my second deployment. My first deployment, I was more of a tanker. We didn't do so much of escorting of convoys, more of escorting the area of convoys patrolling through. And that's all we do. That's what soldiers do since the beginning of Iraq, well, at least since when I showed up in 2004. Until even now, we're out. Obama, pulled out our soldiers a year ago, right? We're all clear of Iraq. But look, you got Blackwater, KBR, Halliburton, and Z, and Academy. They're pulling the same security, the same amount of force, with just a civilian contractor name behind it. And every time they kill 20 or 30 civilians, they get to change their name. It must be convenient for these people.
Yeah, it's convenient and very sad, and it's delusional for us to think we're out of Iraq. We have the largest military base, the largest embassy in the history of planet Earth there. I don't even know how many acres, 100-acre facility, and like you just said, all these private mercs, that's what they are, they're mercenaries, on the U.S. taxpayer dime over there providing this kind of security. So Will you drive? Let me. We got about a minute to our next break, and I want to get as much detail out as I can. Were you, when you were providing security for the central operating base, were you doing it in a tank, or were you doing it in up armored Humvees? What were you rolling in?
My first tour, it was about split up 3 times. We had 113s, which are armored personnel carriers.
Right.
We had 998s, which are just typical Humvees, and we had M1 Abrams, and we just got split it up between what was available and how much downtime you had. That was how it rolled. And so, yeah, I might have been, my first tour was 1/3 through an Abrams,
right,
and 1/3 in a Humvee, and 1/3 in a 130.
Well, everything you just mentioned there, the only one of them that can stand any kind of a hit is the Abrams. The 113 is an aluminum armored personnel carrier. Unless it has reactive armor on it, is nothing more than butter for IED to go through. All right, we're going to be back to hear more about this. We're going to get into, at the backside of this break, what happened in Fallujah, because Adolf Bernanke was there. We're going to be back in 3.5 minutes. Hang tight. Welcome back, Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, along with Adolf Bernanke, not his real name, of course. We're talking about his experience in Iraq, 2004. It started out running, basically, you're running security for this operating base, and at some point, you guys got the Army, the tankers got called in to Fallujah. And if you have your speaker on your mic, go ahead and or on your computer, please crush that for me, just so we don't have that feedback. But let's get into it a little bit with Fallujah, because that a lot of controversy came out of that region. Give us the backstory a little bit for those that don't maybe remember who was initially in Fallujah, and then how the Army got called in to save the day.
Okay, well, I hope you can hear me.
No, you're good now. You're good.
All right. Well, 2 weeks before November, we were called in. We got hats. We got all the rear guys putting our tanks on hats for all the guys down in Kuwait, and we put our tanks on hats. We're driving from Bakyaba to Fallujah, or Al-Ramadi. And so we get to Al-Ramadi, we station there, or Fallujah. There's many bases. We're sitting there. We sit there for 3 or 4 weeks. Right. This is the second Battle of Fallujah. This is November of 2004.
This is where they need to pacify, because this was the hotbed of resistance, right?
Right. Well, look, the media was telling us that, they were hanging civilian contractors off of bridges. They were killed 27 Marines in the back of a 5-ton, or a 7-ton as they call it in the Marines. So, as a basic soldier, we've been in the theater of Iraq for about 7 or 8 months. We take orders from our commando. We're going to believe these fairy tales. We're going to believe what they tell us. And so, yeah, when we go into these places, when we do our, we haven't seen real combat. The only combat as a tanker for 7 months in Iraq, my first tour that we saw was getting blown up. 155 artillery rounds buried in culverts, 155 rounds buried in ditches, 155 rounds, parked in cars with 7 155 rounds in a taxi cab. This is how they got us, and it worked.
Right.
It worked. And if you were to go onto a Bayonet YouTube channel, or other Syrian YouTube channels, you'll see they're using the same tactics that they used on us, Americans, in Iraq in 2004, in Syria right now, on the Syrian army, the Assad army. And look, I don't know if you know this or not. I mean, I've been doing heavily investigating into what's going on in Syria. I can't discern what's right and what's wrong, what's truth and what's not. But from what my take is, my personal opinion is, the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, this ragtag army of the willing, is marching pro-Syrian army officials off of buildings to their death.
Look, here's the thing. You don't have to be a tactical genius. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out It's the same rolling game plan across the Middle East and North Africa. We're gonna turn on the propaganda machine. We're gonna paint these guys to be Adolf Hitler personified. We're gonna say that they're butchering men, women, and children by the thousands. We're going to have the left and right stand up in unison in Washington, D.C. and say it's time for these people to go. We're going to have our Secretary of State go out and talk about how these people are Satan themselves. We came, we saw, he died, and just beat this drum of patriotism to get the support to go in and depose leadership. Now, I'm with you, Adolf. I don't know the ins and outs of the political scene inside of Syria, but here's the thing: I don't care. I don't want to spend one American dime. I don't want to cause one Syrian individual to die because of an American action. I don't want one American servicemen or women being committed to yet another conflict that is for this cause of patriotism, this cause of spreading freedom. But we always find out later it was a cause of fattening someone's pocketbook.
Amen, and that's a fact. It's because they feed off our kids. I mean, I joined at 19.
Right.
I'm 30 now. Okay, I've lived it a little bit. I did, 27 months in Iraq? I did 7 years total in the military, United States Army. So, yeah, I had a lot of off time, right? So, what's he doing on his off time? What am I doing on my off time? I'm partying with my battle brothers. I'm partying and chilling with my battle brothers, and that's the scary part of it. Is that I know that people on the Renses Network, I know people on the alternative media network are not going to run and jump into the United States military, but your kids might, and that's the only reason I come here and to speak tonight is because to warn your kids, if you have kids, this is what's going to happen, and they're going to see the next false flag, the next September 11th. And they're going to fall for it.
Yeah, it goes on and on and on, without a doubt. I'm going to turn us back to Fallujah a little bit just because it's such an interesting story, and we're running out of time. We have one segment left after this. You're pulling security. You get a call. You start shipping the trucks down, or the tanks down in the back of 18-wheelers, and you show up in the region, the Fallujah region, and they need to pacify this city. And but it was a Marine event to begin with, correct?
Yes, correct, Charlie. And it was a Marine event. And at the beginning of the event, we were just kind of add-ons. But at the end of the event, I have documents to verify this, is that the Marine commander, the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force commander that was in command of us in the 2nd Infantry Division of the United States Army, he came to us at the end of the battle. We were in there for 14 days. I spent 14 days inside of a tank. And after those 15 days, he comes out and says, look, if I wanted this, I could have done it with a push of a button. That's what he said. He comes out and says, I could have done it with a push of a button, referring to a nuclear weapon or...
or leveled with cruise missiles.
Right, exactly. And, the thing is about it is that how much we... sacrifice. We lost people. It wasn't like we just went in there and killed people and, yeah, America. It wasn't like that. We lost seven people from my company. And that was 2-2 infantry, ramrod. And, weren't tankers. I was attached to 2 infantry. But 2-2 infantry, we were there because of them. And all I know is that they pass on their deaths. Even now. Point being is that the fact is this, is that what happened to Fallujah was wrong. Everything the alternative media says about Fallujah is right. We did drop white phosphorus in Fallujah. We dropped it heavily. We almost lost our own tank to white phosphorus. Our own white phosphorus. So, it was war crimes. But just because our own government and the international government don't acknowledge it, doesn't mean that the video evidence isn't out there. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. We can go to YouTube and see that it happened. And I can guarantee you that as a soldier, I was there. And the reason I ain't giving out my name, the reason I ain't giving my my information is because you can go to my YouTube channel, Adolf Bernanke, ADOLPH. Bernenkee. Adolf Bernanke. I know it's not spelled like Adolf. I know it's not spelled like Bernanke. It's kind of meant as a meme. And you should see for yourself. Experience what war is. Prevent your children from going to do these things. Because the media is telling you why we're going to go into Syria. Why we're going to Iran. It's the same reason.
Hang tight, buddy. Hang tight. We're gonna take our last break. We're gonna be back with Adolf Bernanke, more Wide Awake News Radio. 3.5 minutes. Hang tight.
It's easy now. Understand the points within and feel a change already beginning.
Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host. We have Adolf Bernanke joining us for our last segment of this first hour. And I want to get a little bit into, the reason that Adolf has stated, and I believe him, that he's coming on here is because he just doesn't want to see anybody else being lured into this romantic notion of going to war for your country, because that's not what it's about. That's what you're sold. That's what you're going to have, when some famous movie stars come out and talk about, we're spreading democracy, spreading freedom. Look, here's the thing. With a little bit of searching on your own, you can find out that Iraq was a very modern nation in 1989, in 1990. Iraq was at the forefront in that region of medicine, of education, of their infrastructure. Looking at it now, a couple decades later, it is literally. Third world is not even a good description. It is a hovel of what it used to be. It's bombed out buildings. It's no infrastructure, spotty infrastructure. It's corruption in government. It's ongoing military presence, even if they're not wearing a U.S. uniform. They're wearing a Merc uniform. It is completely and totally under the control of corporate interests. I don't know how else to explain it or how else to say it. If you march down the path of going to serve your nation, if you're a kid, if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, if you're 12 years old and you're listening to me, understand this. You must question everything that is put before you as a patriotic cause. It is not patriotic to go overseas. It is not patriotic to go overseas and carry out orders that lead to people dying for illegitimate reasons. It's not. It's patriotic. A case can be made that it's patriotic when you see foreign invaders coming into your country, that you do anything possible to get them out of your country. That's patriotism, not to go over there and be spreading terror on behalf of a nation that is sold out to special interests. Adolf Bernanke, I want to talk Fallujah. It was one of the most horrific battles in the Second Gulf War, however we're going to describe what's been going on for the last dozen years. Thousands of people dead. 60% of the city of Fallujah rubble, and this wasn't done with mortars and RPGs. This was done with heavy equipment such as M1 Abrams. You talked about white phosphorus. Let's get into that for a little bit. When you would go into a neighborhood, or when there was a neighborhood that needed to be pacified, how would that be done?
It was usually pacified, at least in the Second Battle of Fallujah, by fire. We shoot 2 or 3 heat rounds or impact rounds into a building and clear it. That was the way to clear a building. And I know, this is sick. This is absolutely disgusting. And I lived it. I watched it, and I did it. And now look, a lot of us in the alternative media have witnessed what's going on in the world, and we're angry about it. Rightfully angry about it. But imagine if you were living it and doing it under a pretense that you believed, and realize that pretense was wrong. And that's my point. That's the reason I'm here. It's the fact that what happened in Iraq, it's over now. Iraq is supposedly over, and that's one
feather in the cap?
Obama promise. That was one Obama promise fulfilled.
Yeah.
And now he's saying he's going to pull out our soldiers in 2014 from Afghanistan.
Well, it was in 2009. The pullout date was July of 2011. Here we sit in August of 2012, and I had told Adolf before the program we were talking. I said, "You watch. You watch. We're going to see it. We're going to see a surge in Afghanistan because of all the blue on green attacks and killings we've seen over the last couple months. Or actually, 35, I believe, so far in the year 2012 alone. We're building enemies around the world, and it's you really, Adolf. At some point, you wake up and realize, wait a minute. Maybe if I'm in Afghanistan and I'm an Afghani, or if I'm a Pakistani and I'm seeing B-52 bomb strikes, I'm seeing on the high end, and I'm seeing drone strikes on the low end, and everything in between nonstop since the year 2001. Well, maybe they have a point. Maybe they want us out of there for a reason because family members are dying. Men, women, children are dying because of Hellfire missile strikes that are on the increase. And all we hear about is, hey, we got Al-Qaeda number X. And we don't hear about, the Al-Qaeda number X and 15 other people that were in the house or in a convoy also died. Battle fatigue works both ways. I'm sure these people are more than anxious for us to be out of there. But we keep beating the drums of war that we're trying to, we're pretending we're doing some kind of good by committing all this time, all this resource, and all this blood into this fight. And so I commend you for coming on here and trying to talk to the younger kids out there who are thinking about, getting out of high school, getting out of college, and throwing an M4 on their shoulder.
Well, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on your show. And I have a younger brother and sister who happen to be twins, and they're right in that age of being drafted or joining the military. And they never will because they know me and they know what my history is. But my philosophy is this. Look, after 11 years, maybe not so many are willing to go fight the next war. But give it another 2 years. Give it another 3 years. Give it an economic collapse. Give it a death of a dollar. How many people will be willing to join the military when a dollar won't? You take $100 to buy a loaf of bread or a loaf of. This has happened in the past. If we don't look to history to realize what could happen in the future, then we're doomed to repeat what happened in the past. And that's what's happening right now. Now look, I know that the war. Obama comes out, he says, hey, look, we're not going to support Israel if they attack Iran. We're just going to stay out of it. And that's good. I support that option. I'm not an Obama fan by any means. But if his cabinet says that, I support that. But the thing about it is that I was there for 2.5 years in the Middle East, driving convoys from Keystar to Tel Afar. And this is from north to south to Iraq. And these are Ford F-250s, Chevy 3500s, Toyota. These are American built, and they're going to wherever. They're not going to Iraq. We're just escorting them to north south to Turkey, to Jordan, to Syria, and we should know better than this. We should wake up. And I know that I'm not going to save anybody from the next false flag, except for the people that listen to the station, listen to the show. Don't let the next, whatever it is, even if it's a freaking nuke over some great city in the United States, don't go and join the Army, because the Army, the United States military, or the military that you go to sign up for, might not be the good guy. It might have been the perpetrator, not the people in the military, but at the higher ups, it might have. We got to stand out of this. We got to give up to debt-based usury. Stop giving into foreclosures. Stop giving into.
Stop using our military as a hammer in order to plow the way for this phony capitalism that we're pumping around the world. I agree with that sentiment 100%. You need to understand that even if your family, like mine, has a military tradition, guys, we're not ousting some evil despot dictator in order to set a people free. If that were the case, the evidence would be proving myself and AB, that's what I'm going to call you from now on, AB wrong.
Thank you.
But yeah. But the facts on the ground, the facts from what you can see with your own very eyes, prove out that isn't the case. We're not spreading. We're not getting any kind of return on this horrific investment we're making. The only return that's coming is blood on our side, blood on their side, and a bunch of kids, mainly on both sides, that are paying the ultimate price for nothing more than lip service, patriotic fervor, nothing more than beating a drum in order to get a response. And we need to stop being good little trained monkeys and going and doing what we're told for these reasons that have been proven out. Like I said, you don't have to be, you don't have to have a crystal ball. You don't have to take my word for it. If it weren't true, you wouldn't see the evidence before your eyes.
This is my last segment, right?
Yes.
All right, well, I won't let this go. Is that, look, we might be done with Iraq. We might almost be done with Afghanistan, even if it's not going good. We're going to pull out of Afghanistan one way or the other. But the thing about it is it ain't going to be American soldiers in Afghanistan. It's going to be American contractors in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Just like there's American contractors in Iraq. Look, we never left Iraq. Look, as the dollar dies, as America becomes Greece, as our United States dollar becomes as valuable as the drachma, we're going to see Academy, ZE, Blackwater fulfill these jobs of empire building. Okay,
Right.
so the war's over, right? But we still got ZE, Academy, KBR, Halliburton, Blackwater, all of these corporations, and anybody looking for a dollar that can pass their test, they're going to go and continue what they're doing. And that's what's coming here. So, look, I can't tell you how to prep for the future, because you think we're in these wars overseas, but those wars are coming here. Because as our dollar dies, those Blackwater, ZE, Academy fronts are going to be pulling those same securities jobs here in America, as cops can't be funded, as military can't be funded.
And as the economic conditions continue to deteriorate, we're going to, and as the citizenry realizes, the further we go down this path, the more people become non-persons, the more people are into the streets, the more you need everything that AB was just talking about. Adolf Bernanke of the chat room, of course not your real name, thank you very much for your service. Thank you very much for coming on here and sharing your story, and I appreciate you participating in the program. All right, guys, stay tuned. Right after our longer break here, we're going to have Bert Rangurian. I think I said it right. He's been on before. You might remember the name. He was arrested for trespassing on private property at the Denver International Airport. It's a fascinating story. You're going to want to hear it. Stay tuned. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.